Carlos Santana finally breaks his silence at 77. Carlos Santana, born in 1947 in Autlán de Navarro, Mexico, is a world-renowned guitarist who blended rock with Latin American rhythms. Rising to fame with his band Santana in the late 1960s, he captivated audiences at Woodstock with his electrifying performance of Soul Sacrifice. His career flourished through decades, marked by hits like Black Magic Woman and the Grammy-winning album Supernatural in 1999. Known for his spiritual connection to music, Santana's guitar sound is instantly recognizable. Today, he stands as a cultural icon who bridged generations, influencing countless musicians worldwide. Santana's journey from humble strings. Following the story of his later global success, it is essential to return to Carlos Santana's earliest years to understand the foundation of his extraordinary journey. Born in 1947 in Autlán de Navarro, Mexico, Carlos grew up in a modest household where music was not a luxury, but part of everyday life. His father, a mariachi violinist, filled the home with melodies that shaped Carlos's earliest memories. At just 5 years old, he attempted to follow in his father's footsteps by learning the violin. However, the instrument did not ignite his spirit, leaving him restless for a sound that could truly speak to his soul. That turning point came when Carlos discovered the guitar. Unlike the violin, the guitar felt alive in his hands, capable of expressing both rhythm and emotion in ways he had never experienced before. Moving with his family to Tijuana, a bustling border city, Carlos found himself surrounded by a vibrant musical atmosphere where Latin sounds collided with American rock and blues pouring in from across the border. The city became his training ground, nurturing his passion and sharpening his instincts. Rather than formal lessons, Carlos embraced the real school of the streets. He carried amplifiers and equipment as a roadie for local bands like the TJs, observing every detail of their performances. Before long, he was invited to play, discovering the rush of connecting with an audience. By the age of 15, he was already performing in smoky bars and lively nightclubs, often filled with working-class patrons escaping their daily struggles with drink and dance. These venues, rough yet electric, gave Carlos the chance to experiment, adapt, and refine his style in front of real people. Night after night, the hardships of his youth, poverty, crowded clubs, and long hours were also the building blocks of his resilience. Every performance, no matter how small, became a lesson in discipline, improvisation, and the sheer power of music to move people. Those early experiences in Tijuana forged not only his skills as a guitarist, but also his deep belief that music was more than entertainment. It was survival, expression, and freedom. It was within this fiery environment that Carlos Santana, the boy from a humble mariachi household, began his transformation into a musician destined to change the sound of rock forever. Carlos Santana's San Francisco struggles. Building upon the hard-earned lessons from Tijuana, Carlos Santana's next chapter unfolded in San Francisco, where the promise of opportunity collided with harsh reality. When his family migrated to the Mission District, they carried little more than hope. The neighborhood, crowded with immigrants and working-class families, was alive with culture but equally marked by poverty. For young Carlos, daily life became a struggle for survival. He washed dishes in local diners, working long hours for meager wages, all while saving every coin with two clear goals in mind: to secure legal papers in the United States and to buy a guitar that could carry his dreams further. Yet hardship struck close to home. After months of saving diligently, Carlos faced a crushing blow when his mother took the money he had put aside to pay for his younger sister's dental treatment. Though her decision came from necessity, the young musician felt betrayed, heartbroken, and frustrated. He briefly left home, only to return later with a deeper understanding of family sacrifice. These moments of tension and reconciliation became part of the emotional depth that later infused his music. Life in San Francisco was far from comfortable. Carlos often slept on the floor in cold apartments without heating, wrapping himself in whatever blankets were available. Meals were simple: rice, beans, and little else. To make ends meet, he took his guitar to the streets, playing for tips from strangers. Each performance on sidewalks and plazas was more than just survival. It was an exercise in resilience and a chance to refine his sound in front of diverse audiences. Out of these struggles emerged a unique musical identity. Santana began blending the soulful intensity of blues with the fiery rhythms of Latin percussion and the raw energy of rock. The multicultural atmosphere of San Francisco in the 1960s, where counterculture, jazz, and Latin music intersected, provided fertile ground for his style to grow. Passers-by were captivated by the sound of his guitar, which carried both pain and hope, discipline and improvisation. What had started as a way to earn spare change on the streets was evolving into something powerful and original. These experiences in San Francisco did more than shape Carlos's musicianship. They defined his worldview. Poverty, sacrifice, and the constant fight for dignity carved a resilience that echoed in every note he played, even in the face of hardship. Santana held tightly to his instrument, using it as both a shield and a compass. It was in those difficult years, sleeping on bare floors, surviving on beans, and pouring his soul into the guitar, that Carlos Santana began to transform from a struggling immigrant into a voice that would soon resonate across the world. Carlos Santana's career-altering moment, after years of hardship in San Francisco, sleeping on floors and playing guitar on the streets for survival, Carlos Santana's persistence finally collided with destiny. In 1966, the young guitarist received an unexpected chance that would alter the course of his life. Promoter Bill Graham, a legendary figure in the Bay Area music scene, needed a last-minute replacement for a band that had canceled at the Fillmore, one of the most influential venues of the era. Graham invited Santana to step in. What could have been a modest opportunity became a defining moment. Carlos and his group delivered such a fiery and passionate performance that the audience left with his name etched in their memory. For the first time, Santana was not just another struggling musician, he was a rising force, encouraged by this momentum. Carlos officially formed the Santana Blues Band alongside keyboardist and singer Greg Rowley, bassist David Brown, and percussionist Marcus Malone. Their sound was unlike anything else in San Francisco, a daring blend of blues, Latin rhythms, and rock energy. Soon after, the group simplified their name to Santana, a decision that symbolized both unity and the unique identity that Carlos himself was shaping. The band quickly became a local favorite, standing out in a city saturated with psychedelic rock acts. The true breakthrough, however, came in 1969 at Woodstock. Once again, Bill Graham played a decisive role, pressuring the festival organizers to give Santana's band a slot, even though they had not yet released a single album. At just 22 years old, Carlos stepped onto the stage before an audience of hundreds of thousands. The performance was electrifying, especially their explosive rendition of Soul Sacrifice. Though Carlos admitted he was under the influence and battling to control his guitar during the set, the sheer intensity and rawness of his playing captivated the crowd. The footage of that moment later became one of Woodstock's most iconic sequences, immortalizing Santana as a new voice in rock history. After Woodstock, Santana achieved fame with their debut album featuring Evil Ways. What made this period remarkable was how swiftly Santana went from obscurity to stardom. Within 3 years, he had journeyed from playing for tips on the streets of San Francisco to commanding the stage at Woodstock and charting a top 10 hit. But more than fame. This breakthrough marked the arrival of a revolutionary sound, one that blurred cultural boundaries and opened doors for Latin music within the rock genre. For Carlos Santana, the Fillmore, the formation of his band, and the unforgettable Woodstock set were not just milestones, they were proof that perseverance, risk, and authenticity could transform a young immigrant's dream into a global phenomenon. Carlos Santana, Glory and Struggles. Following the explosive breakthrough at Woodstock and the success of his debut, Carlos Santana entered the 1970s as one of the most innovative guitarists of his generation. His second album, Abraxas, 1970, propelled him into global stardom. Featuring iconic tracks like Black Magic Woman and Oye Como Va, the record showcased a sound that was both exotic and instantly recognizable. From the very first note, Santana's guitar voice was unmistakable, fluid, spiritual, and capable of blending passion with precision. Abraxas became a cultural phenomenon, topping charts and proving that Latin-infused rock could captivate audiences worldwide. Yet Santana's artistic vision was not limited to commercial hits. Inspired by the boundary-pushing work of Miles Davis and John Coltrane, Carlos embarked on a journey into jazz fusion. Albums such as Caravanserai, 1972, Welcome, 1973, and Borboleta, 1974, marked a bold departure from mainstream rock. These records, while less commercially successful, earned admiration from critics for their sophistication and depth. Santana embraced improvisation, spiritual themes, and complex rhythms, reflecting his search for transcendence through music. This period revealed his refusal to be confined by industry expectations. He was willing to sacrifice chart success in pursuit of artistic truth. However, the shift came with turbulence. As the band experimented with new directions, internal tensions grew, and commercial sales declined. Some fans longed for the fiery Latin rock of Abraxas, while others admired his daring exploration of jazz. For Carlos, the 1970s were both a peak of artistic freedom and a test of resilience. Amidst the shifting landscape of popular music, he held fast to his belief that the guitar was a spiritual instrument, one that could heal and elevate the human spirit. 2 decades later, against all odds, Santana experienced one of the most remarkable comebacks in music history. In 1999, he released Supernatural, an album that bridged generations and redefined his legacy, featuring collaborations with younger artists such as Rob Thomas, Smooth, Wyclef Jean, and the product G&B, Maria Maria. The record became a phenomenon, selling over 30 million copies worldwide. Supernatural dominated the Grammy Awards, winning 9, including Album of the Year, and introduced Santana's sound to a new generation of listeners. Santana's Supernatural united diverse artists through timeless music. The arc of Santana's career reveals a fascinating paradox. At once, a commercial superstar and an uncompromising seeker of artistic freedom. From the global dominance of Abraxas to the experimental jazz fusion years, and finally to the rebirth of Supernatural. His journey illustrates both triumph and turbulence. Through it all, one constant remained: his guitar, a voice of passion, spirituality, and resilience that continues to inspire millions around the globe. Carlos Santana's hidden life pain. Carlos Santana, whose guitar has echoed across generations with both fire and tenderness, carried within him a life story marked by wounds that fame could not heal. Beyond the spotlight, his personal journey reveals scars of trauma, broken promises, and the long road to forgiveness and redemption. From a young age, Santana was forced to bear a secret that nearly shattered him. At just 10 years old, he was repeatedly sexually abused by a friend of his father. For years, the young boy buried the memory deep inside, unable to speak, convinced that he himself was somehow to blame. That silence turned into a shadow that followed him throughout his life, shaping his relationships and sense of self. It was only decades later, after finding faith and inner strength, that he was able to confront the past, forgive his abuser, and most importantly, release himself from guilt. His adult life seemed to offer stability when, in 1973, he married Deborah King, daughter of the famed bluesman Saunders King. Together, they built not only a family with 3 children, but also a shared mission through the Milagro Foundation, dedicated to supporting underprivileged youth. Yet behind this image of a solid partnership, Carlos was fighting his own demons. He later admitted to multiple infidelities, betrayals that weighed heavily on his marriage. In 2005, Deborah published her memoir, exposing truths that had long been hidden, the pain of living beside a man torn between love and self-destruction. By 2007, after 34 years together, the couple divorced, closing a chapter filled with both music and disillusionment. The collapse of that marriage plunged Santana into one of the darkest periods of his life. In interviews, he has confessed that he contemplated suicide 7 times after the separation. The despair of losing his lifelong partner, combined with the unhealed wounds of childhood trauma, drove him to the edge. Yet, in those moments of darkness, he rediscovered light through his faith. Embracing spirituality gave him the power to forgive, not only the predator who had scarred his childhood, but also himself for the mistakes that had haunted him for decades. That act of forgiveness became the turning point that allowed him to keep living and keep creating. A new chapter began in 2010 when Carlos married Cindy Blackman, a virtuoso jazz drummer known for her fiery performances with artists like Lenny Kravitz. Unlike his first marriage, this union was born from shared artistry as much as from love. The couple often performs together, blending rhythm and melody in ways that reflect not only their musical synergy, but also their emotional bond. Today, Santana shares the stage not just with Cindy, but also with his son, uniting family and music in a harmony that once seemed impossible during his darker days. Carlos Santana's personal story is not simply about the glitter of fame, but about survival. It is about a boy who endured silence, a man who made mistakes, and an artist who found healing through forgiveness, faith, and music. Behind every soaring note of his guitar lies the echo of resilience, the reminder that even the deepest wounds can give birth to a melody of hope. Giving back and building beyond music. Beyond his legendary guitar career, Carlos Santana has consistently shown a deep commitment to giving back. In 1998, he founded the Milagro Foundation, a charity dedicated to improving the lives of underprivileged children worldwide through education, health, and the arts. His philanthropic work runs parallel to his entrepreneurial spirit. Santana ventured into the business world by opening a chain of Mexican restaurants and later expanding into the cannabis industry with his brand Mirayo, designed to promote healing and spiritual balance. What makes his journey even more extraordinary is his unparalleled achievement in music. Santana is one of the very few artists to have an album reach the top 10 in every decade from the 1960s to the 2020s. This rare feat proves that while he continues to innovate in business and charity, his artistry remains timeless and deeply connected to multiple generations. A storm of controversy in 2023, following his decades of celebrated music and philanthropy. Carlos Santana found himself in the middle of a heated debate in 2023. During a concert in Atlantic City, he made comments about gender identity, suggesting that gender is determined before birth. The clip of his statement quickly went viral and drew sharp criticism, particularly from LGBTQ advocacy groups who viewed the remarks as dismissive. In response, Santana initially issued an apology on social media, but later deleted it, replacing it with a piece of spiritual poetry that reflected his personal beliefs. He also expressed support for comedian Dave Chappelle, who himself has been at the center of similar controversies. While some fans expressed disappointment and felt let down by the comments, others emphasized that Santana's musical legacy remains undeniable, highlighting that his influence on guitar playing and fusion music far outweighs one public misstep. A legacy of love and resilience. Despite recent controversies, Carlos Santana remains an enduring musical icon whose life story is marked by both hardship and triumph. At 77 years old, he continues to perform with the same passion that defined his career, turning personal pain into universal healing. His journey reflects resilience, forgiveness, and an unwavering belief in the power of music to unite people. More than a guitarist, Santana stands as a symbol of love and spiritual strength, reminding the world that true greatness is not just about fame, but about lifting others through compassion and harmony. If Santana's journey inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories.